Hey there, bootstrappers. I have been digging into several different books at a time in my morning study for the past several months. I've got about 55 pages of handwritten notes since March, and I wanted to share with you this morning a really unexpected challenge that I had because normally when I consult the commentaries, beyond what's in my study Bible, or I have to pull out the concordance or check several sources to get varying opinions as I try to make sense of a passage that's challenging. It's usually something in the prophetic books or in the apocalyptic literature or Ecclesiastes, maybe. Because Proverbs is kind of straightforward, right? And so one of the places that I have been every day since March is either in Psalms or Proverbs. And I'm Proverbs 27 this morning. And sometimes I can get through an entire book in a day, and sometimes I stick in a little bit in mine, and depending on where I am. But this morning I got stuck on one verse in Proverbs, one verse. And it's pretty straightforward in its language. I even pulled out the concordance to confirm how straightforward it was. But Proverbs 27:7 says, "One who is full loathes honey from the comb, but to the hungry even what is bitter tastes sweet." Now, interestingly enough, well, let me share with you the note from the study Bible. And I use a New International Version study Bible. The editor is D.A. Carson. It's printed by Zondervan. And so the note said, "One who is full, stuffed or satisfied, this person cannot enjoy the sweetness of honey, i.e., they cannot accept wise counsel or correction because they are stuffed with errors. The hungry, these people also have sick appetites, for they crave bad food. What is bitter tastes sweet. The undiscriminating appetite of the hungry cannot detect error." So I thought, because one of the first rules of context is read what's before it, read what's after it. And that's sometimes helpful with Proverbs and sometimes not, because Proverbs is typically pairings of wisdom sayings, and they reinforce each other. It may be stated one way and then stated another way immediately. But in 27, that doesn't really fit. That pattern doesn't really fit, because 1 through 7, they are each like standalone wisdom principles. It's not stated and restated. It's not grouped as many of the Proverbs are, with specific statements that fit a particular wisdom theme. They're just kind of individual statements. So that was not particularly helpful with, as I looked at the context, because I can accept that study note, and I think that there is some weight to that. But I thought, I'm not, I really want to see what somebody else says about this, and I really want to see what their interpretation is, because immediately my understanding was a lot more basic than the one in the study notes. And so my immediate understanding of that verse, one that I've read many times before, is, if you're full, if you're stuffed, if you've overindulged, the thought of anything else is just revolting, right? Like if you have gone to Cheesecake Factory and you've eaten everything on your plate, and you ate the bread they brought out, and then you eat an entire piece of 1,100 calorie cheesecake, like the thought of putting one more thing in your mouth literally will make you sick. You've overindulged. You don't have room for anything else. Like you're done. And it's not wise to overindulge like that, right? What are you missing out on when you overindulge? Okay. And then, but to the hungry, even what is bitter tastes sweet. And so I immediately thought, well, it's no matter how hungry, no matter how bad food is, if you are hungry, if you are starving, if you lack nourishment, you're going to eat anything and you're not going to care. Like it's going to taste good to you because you're so hungry that it doesn't matter, right? Like the thought of a Hot Pocket is not anything that activates my salivary glands, right? But if I was absolutely starving, I'd probably eat a Hot Pocket and be happy to have it, right? So I pulled up a lot of commentaries on this verse, and I promise I'm going somewhere, and I promise it relates to business. Pulled up a lot of commentaries on the verse. And so oddly enough, when you find that theologians have differing interpretations, it most often comes in the places where the prophetic books, like it's very difficult to understand or interpret a passage, okay? And you'll have it in other times in narratives, because there are some who are always looking for allegory or trying to pull things out of a passage that aren't necessarily there. And that's all a huge context conversation for another day. But you typically don't find equally disparate commentaries on Proverbs. It's usually pretty universally agreed what most of them mean. But interestingly enough, on the commentaries that I pulled up, and I probably looked at 15 different commentaries on this, they were different. It was pretty evenly balanced, but about half of them were along the lines of the theme of this particular study note, right? Where it was talking about basically the gospel or wisdom or correction or some type of knowledge or message that's being rejected or accepted. And I don't entirely disagree with that, but I don't disagree with it at all. I think that fits, but I do think this was just like more basic, right? I think it was more basic. I think it goes a little bit back to what I said, because the other side of the commentaries that I found were that the rich do not appreciate what they have and the poor do appreciate. That's not how I read it, though. And when I say that's not how I read it, again, I pulled the concordance to make sure that there was not any room for misinterpretation of the words, like in this translation, that there wasn't a great disparity, and that it was very clear, very flat out, didn't mean anything any different in Hebrew than it means in English today, the way that particular Hebrew words were used in the writing of this. And so it literally was one who is full, satisfied, or possibly oversatisfied, is disgusted by additional food, additional honey, and one who is hungry doesn't even understand what is good, right? Like, you can't discern what's good when you're hungry because you just need to satisfy that need. So that's where I kind of stand on it. Now, can you apply that to knowledge and to wisdom or even to the gospel? Yeah, I mean, you could. It's a principle that applies. But I don't think the commentaries are on point about that the rich don't appreciate things and the poor do. I think it's all about that overindulgence as opposed to starvation, and how both things affect your ability to discern what is good and what is right and what is helpful. Whether that's from a food standpoint or a knowledge standpoint or a business standpoint. And I know I took a really long time to get here. So if you have toughed it out with me till now, thank you. But here's where I'm going with that. When we're hungry for business, when we are in the beginning stages or we're struggling and we've tried all the things and we've listened to so many people, but we need a client and we need revenue and we need it now, and we're feeling the financial pressure. When we're in that place, first of all, we're forgetting who our provider is, right? It's not our business. It's not our efforts, even though we do need to work as if we're working for God. He's our provider, right? So first of all, when we're in that place of desperation, we've already lost sight of that to some degree. But when we're hungry and we're hungry for a client, it muddies our discernment. It interferes with our ability to discern what is really good in terms of advice. We start looking for that magic bullet. We start trying anything that comes along without vetting the person who is advocating for a particular strategy, because we're desperate to get a client. We're desperate to make things work. And the opposite part of that principle, like if you're stuffed, you have plenty of clients, you've had a lot of success, you've met your fill there in an earthly sense, sometimes it can be difficult to discern what would be the right next step. But I think as bootstrappers, most of us are on that other end of that, right? We are on the hungry end where it's difficult to discern what is good, which is why it is so important for us to stay immersed in this, to stay, to abide in Christ, according to John 15, 1 through 17, because we can only do good through him. Without him, we don't have fruit. We don't bear good fruit. And our foundation has to be built in this word. And we have to measure all the things against this. And it is so easy. It is so easy to get sucked in to believe, oh, you're just one funnel away from success if you buy this program, or you invest in this software as a service, or you take this course. And there are some great courses out there. There are some that I recommend. There are some that I'm an affiliate for. But it's not your magic bullet answer. And when we get into that place where we're so hungry that we're desperate and we lose our discernment and we're just grasping at straws and trying to do whatever works, if that's where you find yourself today, I would encourage you to pull back. Pull back and start your days here. Pray, get in the Word, measure, really, really think about what you're doing and really apply the biblical wisdom that God's given us, that He's given us to be able to measure. Use that. Don't be that starving person who's going to take everything and devour everything that comes along because you're so hungry. And so, we would love to have you join us over at Genuine Stewards, which is our group. You can just click up on that visit the group button up there. We have a lot of great conversations there. We dig in a little deeper, but we also have a lot of great resources for you. One of the things that we've done in this group is that there's been a lot of measuring already, right? So the resources you find in our group, the people that we recommend, they've already been vetted. We already know that the advice that they're giving or the strategies that they're teaching are not conflicting with Scripture, right? And so anyway, I just want to encourage you today that when you're in that place, when you're desperate, when you're hungry for business, pull back, go to the Word, seek wisdom from others who are more mature than you and further along than you in your Christian walk. And I don't care who you are, they are always there, right? We are always in discipleship if we allow ourselves to be. There is always somebody who's further along that path than us that can feed us and pour into us and help us stay in the right place. So I encourage you to find those people today if you're not in that environment already. And if you think that this was a great message and there's somebody else that needs to hear it, wouldn't you tell them about it? That would be awesome. And if you have any comments, feedback, questions, we'd love to hear that too. Thanks, guys. I hope you have a blessed and productive week.